Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment, and I'm excited about this one. Really excited. I want to stop first and thank our guest because I know he's coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive. His time, precious time. 24 hours has been offered to every one of us. What we do with our time will expose your sins, as they say. You got to learn how to respect her, man. I'm telling you guys, learn to honor time, and time will reward you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful created Dr. Taylor before us. And so we want to honor him for coming and sharing these things because once it's spent, it's spent. Doc, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
It's an honor. My question, as I said, I pose to every guest that shows up is that reward that we get to experience while we're here on this planet. And that is, how do you serve mankind?
Well, I like to think of myself as an insatiable curiositist. And so that means that, no stone is left unturned. I believe that, when we're given this time, that we need to really learn, that life is a continual process of learning. In fact, I have this manifesto that I live by, which is, discover your best self, be your best self, and share your best self. And to do that, you never really reach a point where you are your best self and can just say, okay, let's kick it for the next few years. It's a constant process of learning, developing, and growing. And that also involves connecting all of us kind of in a variety of ways and realizing that, we are all kind of linchpins to this organic system called Earth and called the universe.
Yeah, it is an organic system, and we get a chance to delve into all the different laws. I tell people everything is a law. We just don't pay attention to it, and we mention some of the natural stuff, but there are also quantum laws, spiritual laws that affect all things. So I love that. Our custom here is to go back. We want to go back because I believe that's where we are born, if you will, and we are given birth through trauma. Trauma is that event that happens in our life, and some of them is benign and some of them are from folks that are a little evil, if you will. We use the terminology from time to time, but trauma has a ability to give birth, the yin and yang of trauma. I believe we enter into the realms by trauma. I was born, my mom told me how traumatic I was, and when we walk into that spiritual realm or walking into that self-development, we walk through a revelation of some trauma. When ultimate trauma, if you will, on this planet that everyone is afraid of, some of them, is death, which will again usher us into another realm that we have access to, but the body keeps you and I legal here. And we have a unit that we stay with on our first encounter on this planet. They call parents, mom and dad. They're strangers. We happen to have brothers and sisters, some of us, but there's a bunch of strangers there. We're going to learn a couple of things. Modus operandi, as they say. We're going to learn how to behave. We're going to learn about thinking process. We're going to learn about all kinds of good things, communication skills. How was your family unit?
How was my family unit? My family unit was incredible, quite frankly. I was very blessed to have two amazing parents that kind of went on this educational journey. Certainly my mom did. When she turned about 50 years old, she went and got a master's degree in spirituality and actually became one of the early women Episcopal deacons in the United States. And then she spent the rest of her life, she lived till 90.
Wow.
Working with communities, retirement communities, convalescent homes, et cetera, in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, that's I came out of the healthcare system in the sense where I worked in a skilled nursing facility, and I had an opportunity to witness some of those folks that are at the twilight of their life, if you will. And one of the saddest things I ever saw, Doc, was many of them didn't know who they were, which is something that we really get into.
Very interesting.
So
yeah.
If, as you are moving through life and education, you mentioned, and the curiosity, and apparently it seems as your curiosity was sparked at a young age. In 2020 vision, as they say, Doc, as this young individual coming up and sparked with education and learning, what did that look like in your younger years as far as that spark being laid out there by mom?
Well, I think that at least in our generation, right? So, one of the things that this generation, and I'm around 60 years of age, so we kind of started challenging some of the norms, if you will,
Yeah.
in society. Like, my parents grew up in a society where everyone went to church and, everyone went to college, and then you kind of got into what I call a river. You got into this river, and whether you were aware of it or not, the river took you, to a place. And I think one of the things that we've been, empowered to do in this evolutionary process of, becoming more self-aware human beings and more responsible human beings, I think, to mankind, although the news headlines may disagree with that in this moment in time. Don't be afraid. Change always comes with tumult. So I think we're going through a little tumult here to get to a beautiful place on the other side. I think that, one of the things I started doing is kind of challenging these kind of norms. And I'll never forget walking, down, going on a walk with my mom, who, walked every evening, right before kind of dusk with our dog. And I was in high school at the time. And I really challenged, I'd gone to an Episcopal school, I'd gone to, church every Sunday. And I started challenging this concept of belief. And it really came from a scientific perspective, more kind of like, how does one balance faith with science? And I think that over the course of my adult life, that exploration has really motivated me to just continue to understand, what do you believe? My mother would ask, what do you believe? And it's taken me a long time to really answer that question. And now with this concept of quantum physics and quantum mechanics and our connectedness energetically and particularly, I'm getting closer to be able to answer that question.
Yeah, it's energetic beings living in bodies. We quantify it, or we label that as you're in quantum physics, the subconscious being. But what is that? And then religion will say the soul of the man. Then what is that? And as we embark on the quest to get some deepness as to, yeah, what is that? That's what we do in our journey, and personally is begin to unpack all of that, because as I said, one of the main programmers on here is religion. And I think religion is one of the most destructive forces on this planet, when we put it in the sense that it has caused much death. And yet it is a programmer that is limiting us as to who we truly are. But when we pull away from that and we start digging in, it kind of exposes some things. So here you are, man, Doc. You're moving through life, and you're going to study now, and you're deciding where to study. What field did you pick? And why did you pick that field?
Well, that's, these are all, just great questions and kind of go to the core of a human, of my humanity. Let's see. So I have 3 degrees. So the first study was in communications and business, because I think one of the really critical pieces of our puzzle is learning how to communicate effectively, clearly. And of course, communication isn't just talking, it's listening, right? It's being able to receive and receive compassionately. And then, somewhere in the middle of this process, after being a very successful television producer, producing kids and family entertainment shows like Arthur and Caillou and Franklin the Turtle and Little Bear and whatnot, I realized that as a society, healthcare, touches a whole lot of people, touches everyone. And our GDP in the U.S. is about 20% spent on healthcare, whereas most modern industrialized nations are kind of hovering around 10. So that had me dive into the healthcare industry and understand kind of how it works. Why is it so expensive here versus elsewhere? I wasn't a medical doctor. Just I wanted to understand the healthcare system. And then, once kind of diving into that, I realized that policy, whether it's set by a private institution or a public institution like government, had an enormous amount of sway or power, influence, if you will, over not just healthcare, but our daily lives, which then excited me, enticed me into exploring and then doing a PhD in public policy. And in that process of exploration and education, curiosity, etc., that's when I found this kind of North Star. It was a very interesting situation. I'll never forget it. It was in a classroom. We were talking about local governance. Mm-hmm. How to govern locally. And my class was filled with mayors of local cities, fire chiefs, police chiefs, etc. And the professor, Peter Robertson at the University of Southern California, started his first class in local governance with, "This is the quantum field." And all of us looked at each other, scratching our heads, going, what is he doing, right? And then he's like, the quantum field is basically filled with kind of this pervasive energy that exists throughout the universe. And, we're all interconnected. And then over a series of classes, we talked about how, we are one giant organization, right? This living organism.
Yes.
Called the universe, and the possibility of our beings, especially our thoughts, which are actually bursts of energy being sent out into the universe, having an impact on not only ourselves, but the people around us, the community around us. And so now my words, if our very thoughts could impact another human being, would you govern a city differently? Would you govern your organization differently? Would you govern your family differently? And that struck a chord for me, going all the way back to my childhood, which started with the question that my mother asked, "What do you believe?" And so that North Star, which appeared in front of me after, full and rich life, had me jump into this amazing adventure, which became a PhD studying the impact of human intention on performance. So,
that is awesome.
And we can talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, I love this. I grew up in the church, as I said, one of the programmers areas, and there's one of my scriptures that I just loved. It was one of mine that I held on to, and I still hold on to it because it enticed me. It gave me an opportunity to explore, if you will. There's a scripture, dog, that says, "Come, let's reason together." And the fact of this being that you talked as God is laid out within this book, that I have the ability and the capability to come and have some reasoning with him. And the fascination to me is that I can bring all of my crazy thoughts, my beliefs, and have a conversation about that. And that's how I approach my life from the time that became a reality, because then I realized, wait a minute, I have access to someone that I can have a conversation with because I'm curious. I want to learn, and I've learned much. And you went into healthcare. I was from there. I know much about the healthcare. I know why and so forth, because I used to write those policies and procedures. I would help HMOs get started. And so I've seen some interesting stuff. I know
I'll bet you have.
So I know you're aware of some of that.
So check this out. You're going to love this.
Go
ahead. So I'm going to really simplify this experiment, but there's this experiment in science called the double-slit experiment. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to really simplify this, but so if you have let's call it a brick wall with two slots in it, and on the other side of the slot there's this white screen, okay? Yeah. And you take a for lack of a better word, a gun and shoot a particle, a singular particle. It's molecular in size, through the slit, and on the white paper on the other side, it looks as if a bullet had hit it. You can imagine a particle, a singular particle, going through a slit, and a dot appears on the other side, right? And then you shoot multiple particles through these slits, and you can see multiple dots. It makes sense. When the scientists then stopped observing this process, went out of the room, okay, and the and the guns continued to shoot the particles, what appeared on the white screen was a wave-like pattern. A wave-like pattern. Okay? This mystified scientists for years, and they finally realized that there is a duality to particles and energy, that a particle is energy and an energy is particle. And the very act of observing
it, yes.
this phenomena created a result. Okay? That our observing created a result. Now, at this time, which is, you're talking about the 90s and the 90s, even Albert Einstein was skeptical. He said, does that mean kind of that you're saying that my observation creates reality, that if I look at the moon and it's there, right, and then I come back and look at you, it's gone? And the theoretical physicist at the time said, well, kind of. Now, that may be a stretch, because there is consciousness, if you will, that keeps particles together to create this cup, let's say, or, the water that goes in this cup. But what is absolutely true, and a unique phenomena that science would acknowledge today, is that our observations create a reality. Now, let's extrapolate that just a hair in philosophical terms. So in the zeitgeist of our popular culture, a little book emerged a couple decades ago called The Secret, and it was also a film. And the book, which was about our ability to manifest, our future or our desires. In this particular case, it was more about our desires to have a relationship, to have money, etc. That was what the book was about. But kind of like a Trojan horse, this book snuck into our culture and showed that, or created the possibility that we participate in the creation of ourselves, that we have dominion over the future of our lives.
Yes.
Science, through the double-slit experiment, shows something similar. And so here's what Bill Tiller, who, bless him, he's passed away now, but he was a professor at Stanford and was early in the study of energetic sciences. He would argue that before there's a particle or energy, before that moment, that's called the superposition. The superposition of all things. The superposition of all things is the potential of all things to become, to be. Before we observe and manifest it into being, that superposition, he argued, is where God is.
Well, let me tell you where I got almost kicked out of the church, because I was in a meeting, and I got up and I was the speaker, and I asked them, I said, where was the man according to our belief system? Where was the man when God was creating the earth? And I knew it would stump them, because I knew they put God in a box and everything about God and us in a box. And they couldn't, and I saw them stump, and I answered them. I said, he was in God creating with him. And after he finished, he released him and said, this is yours. This is your dimension. This is yours. Have dominion over it. And so I was with him, let there be light, let there be light. That's why when scientists now looking at us as the observer, when we move away, there's nothing there. It's just a wave. But when we are looking at it, it is just like it was, let there be light. And we were looking at it because we needed that. And the super began to speak and create what was needed. And then we were released. It says that he released us into this body to house us, to make us legal on this planet. And so you and I are still connected to the super. And it's shown over and over and over through science and quantum physics and all of these things. And now we're recognizing the power that is us, of how powerful and how unique we are, each and every one of us. And that's what this podcast is trying to relate to people. We are connected. We have an independent part of us, but the connectiveness, the interdependent part of who we are energetically, is alive and well all day long. And I believe this, Doc. And I tell people what karma is. Karma is a way by which gives man a way to self-correct based on our behavior. And karma is here to assist us to correct when we do certain energetically behavior, whatever it is, and we're sending out that energy, it comes back to us to afford us the ability to, wait a minute, I'm doing something wrong. I need to make some adjustments to change that relationship with others. I treat you differently. If I sow good seed in you, the karmic return is going to come. It comes differently than if I sow a derogatory karmic behavior. But it comes back to help us, mankind. And I think that's all it is, to help us to self correct so that we can continue growing and loving each other, giving each other the energetic release that we need, and see the greatness of each other. And I think that is the purpose of karma, while we're here on this beautiful planet. But let's go ahead. So here you are, you're moving through life, and you gained your degrees. And this particular one, because I want to get into this one deep right here with our thoughts and stuff like that, as you saw the sins of healthcare, and you were awakened in that class with the brilliance of this professor to show men now the power of their thoughts and how it impacts all of us while we're here. When you began to get that information, that data into you, what did it begin to do to you?
No, that's an interesting question. Well, so, as a scientist, and not someone who, comes to a conversation with answers versus coming to a conversation listening, or coming to a conversation to learn, I did not, I was a skeptic. I mean, I was a skeptic. I'm not someone who, goes to see shamans. I'm not someone who necessarily even believed that our interconnectedness, which I can be comfortable with scientifically. I mean, if you think about, the Big Bang as being that moment in time in which all things started, if it started from here, then of course we're all interconnected. That makes, scientific, intellectual sense to me. But the idea of us being able to kind of influence ourselves and our communities, either around us or the greater community being, the earth, with our thoughts, very, very skeptical. And so one of the beautiful things about, conducting research and having the time, taking the time intentionally to discover, possibilities, limitless possibilities, is really an amazing thing. So, and it all starts with some just very basic experiments. One of them would be taking a shaman. Now, let's just talk about shamans for a second. So, shamans are energists, right? They work with energy to heal, typically. And if you walked into an energy reading booth, okay, and something, kind of imagine like the size of a telephone booth that would read the energy coming off your body, we would all have this kind of red orange, field that surrounds us. But a shaman walking into that booth, it would have a broader, brighter illumination. And when we're in that booth and we send an intention, let's say to a loved one, let's say to my mother who would be in a hospital, we would see our energy level around us increase a bit while we were sending that intention. Some people may call it a prayer, and that loving gesture actually would be sent, and our energy field would expand. If a shaman sent that same energetic intention to my mother, not even his or her mother, but to my mother, you would see that field increase 100x, 500x, 1000x. It's significantly larger. And you can imagine, this goes to the root of your question, which is how has it affected you, all this studying. You can imagine that, if I wanted to run a marathon tomorrow, I probably couldn't even finish halfway through the marathon. I mean, I think I'd be exhausted. But if I took a year or two to get in shape and to run regularly and eat appropriately, etc., then over a period of time, I could probably finish the marathon. That doesn't mean I win the marathon, but I would finish the marathon. And so that time that it took for me to complete a basic function, running a marathon, an investment to get me to a place where I could even accomplish the goal, not win the goal, but accomplish the goal, is what we can all do. And what I've personally done in understanding how to use our energies so that when I send an intention, that energy field is a little more powerful, if you will, than it was when I started 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is significant. And I think the beautiful thing is we are all energy sources.
Mm-hmm.
Continue with this thought for a moment because it's quite interesting. So if you can imagine, like, our mobile phones are antennae, right? Just kind of like for some people who are of my generation, remember having an antenna on the top of our roof to receive a television signal. But our mobile phones are the same thing. We're walking around with antennae, right? Because at the end of the day, we receive information, emails, texts, whatever, and we send information. And that happens as we're just walking around, right? And so that broadcast of a signal from your mobile phone is exactly who we are as people too. In other words, we are antennae that are sending information into the quantum field and receiving information. And therefore, if we were aware of what we were sending, like throughout the entire day,
Yeah.
right? Think about that. An average human being has 80,000 thoughts per day. 80,000 thoughts per day. And about 85% of those are negative.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, it's kind of like just a basic thing. Like you know, if you're a golfer and you're sitting over a putt, you're like, I think I'm going to miss this in your head. Just a thought that comes like this versus I'm going to make it. And you can train your mind to think more positively.
Yes.
I mean, would you send a text to your friend that says, I think you're ugly? Right? You know, no, of course not. But does that thought come into our head occasionally? That dress is ugly. That shirt is. Yes, it does. But stop it. Because the truth is, you're a broadcasting tool for the universe. And if we can shift our thinking to positive thinking, everyone around us benefits.
Yeah, that's where in my life, Doc, I can relate to me. In my life, meditation gave me permission to pick which thought I would broadcast. Because what it did, it allowed me to because thoughts will come, as you said, thousands of them per minute, even while you're meditating. And I had to learn which one I would quiet my thoughts, said, no, I did not give you permission. And I would pick and choose which one I broadcast because I knew I came to the revelation that which one I broadcast will come to pass. And so as I began to train myself, like you said, you had to train yourself through to run the marathon. I began to train myself in my meditation when my world was colliding and falling apart as a single dad with 4 boys and trying to manage that and leadership in healthcare. It was all over the place. But when I was introduced to meditation, my entire day and life changed while I was sitting on the floor, meditating, setting the intention of what I wanted my day to be like. And it is a powerful exercise. Meditation is one of these major tools out there, but there are many other tools that will allow you the space with where you can have your thoughts pick one and create the world that you want because we are creating all day long. As you said, 80% of our time we're thinking all these crazy things, but there's a few of those, Doc, people are creating, they're picking it up, worried about the bills, worry about this and that, worry about the money. And those things are broadcasting and bringing in their life that they have. And so what they do with folks like yourself is to teach us how to be able to access our thoughts and go into the limitless playground or field, which is called the quantum field or quantum realm, and begin to pick which one we want to bring into our life and teach us through practice. So here, as you're bringing these things and you're learning it, Doc, how did you begin to implement it? Because you got to now take all this data that is out there, that is quote unquote the theory, and you have to bring it into your life to start showing the lab. You're showing it is going to work, right? So how did you begin to do that? What tool did you use to assist you in that process? And talk to us about the results that you began to see as you are implementing those tools.
Well, I think that one of the things that is fascinating about intention versus, let's say, meditation
Mm-hmm.
or prayer is, so meditation would be an emptiness of thoughts.
Yeah.
If you're really accomplished as a meditator, you have an emptiness, a place where there is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas intention is something. It
Mm-hmm.
actually is the opposite of meditation, it is a thought, a singular thought that is studied, focused on, that comes from our senses, our heart, our mind. Sometimes you can even smell or feel an intention that is released. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever had a, a real loved one, lying in a hospital bed where you're holding their hand. I mean, there is a power there
Mm-hmm.
of healing, of compassionate, loving healing that is being shared between your body and theirs. And what's fascinating about the quantum field is that sharing of energy, that I think we've all experienced, whether it even just be, holding the hand of your 5-year-old as you're taking them to school in the morning, that amazing energy that's shared can also be shared remotely without regard to time and distance.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that just is incredible to observe. And that shows the power of our thinking. Like, there's a lot of interesting studies. Lynn McTaggart, for example, is a best-selling author who just did a study last week with thousands of people setting intention to lower crime in a city over a weekend. There was a transcendentalist meditation done about 10 years ago in Washington, D.C. In the month of May, where for whatever reason, the historically, as the winter gave way to spring and summer and the transition of snow and frigid cold to warmer climates, there was a dramatic increase in crime in the area. And so transcendentalist meditators came in, about 5,000, sat in the city and meditated for lowering the crime rate. And as it turns out, the crime rate dramatically dropped during that interval, during that weekend, if you will, of time, which is kind of an incredible thing, right? And there have been, dozens and dozens of experiments done. For me, there was a Stanford University study done in the 1980s that had a shaman in New York and Maine, that kind of northeastern corridor, for AIDS patients in Palo Alto, California, who had the highest form of AIDS and whose lives were in jeopardy. The shaman sent healing intentions to them, to a group of AIDS patients, and they saw vital statistics improve over time. None of the group that was sent intention died, whereas in the control group, the group that did not receive intention, their statistics did not improve, and unfortunately, some of those patients died. And so, but these experiments, down to a very simple level, which is, let's say, a shaman originally taking, let's say, apple seeds and putting them in his hand and intending for them to grow faster and be more productive, and then planting those seeds, versus taking seeds from a similar source without intention and planting those seeds at the same time. The tree that received intention grew faster and bore more fruit. Then, as people started understanding quantum physics, that same experiment was done with a shaman in, say, San Francisco, and someone holding the seeds in Melbourne, Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And the shaman in San Francisco sent the same positive energy, which is be productive and be more fruitful, through the quantum field to Melbourne. And when those seeds were planted, those seeds that received intention remotely grew faster and were more productive. And so this concept, which I think we can all get our head around, the idea of hugging someone and feeling the energy between two people, and the love and the power that may have over us, as far as, feeling comforted, feeling loved, can also happen remotely is an incredible concept. And it shows our interconnectedness and shows the power that we all have to impact other people. So please, let's all of us recognize this power and start to act accordingly.
Yeah. I have been teaching and educating, if you will, because I had a course on this too, because I mentioned to you the religion and quantum physics and how those are that are in church were resistant to the quantum and psychologists and stuff. And when I began to show them even that experiment being done in the Bible with Jesus Christ, a centurion soldier came to him and says, "Hey, I need my daughter sick. Can you heal her?" And Jesus said, "Sure, you want me to come to this house?" And he said, "No, I don't need you to come to the house. I just need you to send your intention to heal her, and she will be healed." And Jesus looked at him and says, "Wow, I never seen this kind of faith ever, period." And so here is a written documentation of this individual that did that. And we read it all the time in the Bible. And no one ever thinks of it as, and I keep telling them, it is the same thing. It's just the different terminology, as I said to you earlier, that we use to explain something. If you go to, a different culture, they will use a different name or something to relate to God. It's just the same thing. It's a different language, different culture. But the quantum field, or what we call in the church, the heavenly places, are the same. And you can go and extract and do your things and so forth. And so Jesus utilized it through distance, never showed up to the house. And the woman was healed, that daughter was healed. And so we have to recognize that we are speaking the same language and stop fighting and begin to come together and really become effective, and don't let somatics like the way we are talking about it come between us. Talk to us, Doc, how you came about and put the intention network and all these different things as you begin to study and see all this marvelous power of who we are and what we are, and so forth. When you start talking about the quantum fields, how you relate it to now you're practicing it in your life. How did you start utilizing it with others, if you will, those that are in your sphere, as you began to educate them as to what you were learning and seeing results in your life? How did that translate?
Well, I think an interesting answer to that question comes from kind of the study I did, which involved a very high level of amateur athletes. So because I'm a business guy,
Mm-hmm.
I was interested in how intention could impact human performance versus me being a healthcare professional where I may have focused on healing. When I dove into my research, there were literally dozens and dozens of experiments done, like the one I shared a minute ago at Stanford among AIDS patients around healing and how intention can impact healing. But I hadn't read a study on how intention could impact, let's say, creativity, innovation, or human performance. And I believe it can. And so what I did was I went to the University of Southern California in Los Angeles and went to their athletic department and got NCAA compliance and USC compliance, and then found a coach within the athletic department who was the coach of the men and women's swim team. And she believed in the power of intention. So what we did then was, talk to the athletes and have them kind of sign up for this study that would take place over the course of a season. We would send intention from a shaman and from a electronic intention device, which was actually created by Bill Tiller, the man I mentioned before, a professor at Stanford that kind of coined the phrase energetic sciences. And so we had intention coming from two sources to these student athletes. And what we showed over time is that we were statistically significantly impactful to their performance, to the point where the women's swim team finished in the top 10 in the U.S., the men in the top 20, the highest they'd been in the past decade, and the coach won Coach of the Year. and so, which is really kind of an incredible event, because here's the thing that I think is worth really acknowledging in this moment, which is that right now in our culture, we idolize, if you will, athletes, perhaps more than ever before in our history, whether it be football players like Mahomes, or whether it be basketball players, etc. And what's fascinating about an athlete is that I would argue an athlete lives an intentional life more than most of us. And because think about how they live their life. Like in the case of the swimmers that I worked with, every morning they got up at 4 a.m. Every morning by 5 a.m. they're in the pool for 2 hours, right? They're perfecting their craft. They go to class. They'd come back. They'd swim again. They have nutritionists and mental coaches, and they have, technical coaches, et cetera. And at that level, at the University of Southern California, which is at the kind of highest level of amateur sports, many of them swam in the Olympics, right? But they did all of this every day since they were 9 years old to do what? To improve the speed of their breaststroke by 1 second.
Yeah.
By 1 second. And all of this work was done to increase their speed of their performance by a second. Now, if that's not living a life that is truly intentional, I'm not sure what is. So what can we take away from this, right? Here we idolize these athletes who all they're trained to do, and they do this every day of their lives, is to catch that football when it's thrown to them if you're a receiver, right? And not drop it, even in the most difficult circumstances. What can we do in our daily lives to actually live that intentionally? And I got to tell you, without intention, I think in essence, we're rudderless. Because we're living in a world, as we've just talked about, where we are broadcast signals. And if everyone is a broadcast signal, that means there's like 6 billion broadcast signals going off at the same time. And if you think about the universe, there's trillions, it's infinite amount of broadcast signals going off. So how do you actually kind of walk through life and navigate this matrix that we live in? Well, you do it with intention and with purpose.
I love that story, Doc, because it's the truth, and it's exactly how we ought to be living here, if you will, intentionally. And when we get to that space, we are in our super, I guess you would say, and that's where we start doing and getting things done. I remember reading and being a part of an ashram where I learned meditation and so forth, and the different types of meditation, the breathing, and all of these things. And I began to exercise and put all these things. But when you marry all of that with intention, you become very effective in making the changes necessary to obtain your desired outcome. So, Doc, here you are today. And, we see the need of people becoming intentional in their life. You talked about an athlete. Talk to us, Doc, because we need some encouragement, because we have everything going on. We have the bills. We got to pay the bills. We got the car note. We got the insurance. We got the kids. We got all the distractions, if you will, of life. How does Mr. and Mrs. Smith break through to begin to pursue a life of becoming intentional? What is it that we need to take stock of, if you will, for us to begin to walk on that journey? Before some of us, we start on this journey when everything falls apart, but you don't need to start there. Talk to us as to how can we interject your knowledge, your peace into our everyday life, if you will.
Well, that's a great question. And, I think the answer is to just start. It's worth noting that the intention we sent the swimmers was not win the race. And in fact, the swim team didn't finish number 1 in the nation. They finished in the top 10 in the nation. The intention we sent was how one can improve their performance, and that took some study. Like we asked the coaches, if someone's going to swim a better time, what's involved in that, right? Not a swimmer myself, or at least a professional swimmer. I swim. But the answer was quite fascinating. So, for example, when you're underwater, when a swimmer's underwater, let's say they flip at the end of the pool and then they come back to swim their second lap. If you're underwater longer, then there's less friction than there is on the surface of the pool. so you can actually go further faster,
Yeah.
which requires you then to have an increased lung capacity,
Mm-hmm.
which requires then for you to have a certain calmness, even though you're in the middle of a race, and a certain mindset. And so the intention wasn't win the race. The intention was, may these swimmers breathe more deeply. May they be calm. May they be able to hold their breath underwater longer.
Yeah.
And may they have a peace of mind and a presence to perform at their best possible selves in that moment. And why I share this explicitly is because you can't sit there in your living room and say, I want $1 million. That would be an incorrect, if you will, potential for manifestation. One has to start by saying, okay, how do I want to live my life intentionally? How can I be a contributor? How can I be beneficial to mankind, to my family, to my loved ones, or my community? And so it starts with us taking 10 minutes every day from the same place in our home and sending a positive intention to someone else. And that gift of compassion, that gift of thoughtfulness is the best place to start, because that then creates this kind of positive ability to receive intention and receive possibility from others and from the universe. But it starts with sending positive intentions to others. And it can be very simple.
Yeah.
10 minutes a day, thinking about sending positive intentions to other people. And then over time, crafting an intention for yourself that is more about trying to get to a finishing point, but being open to the roads that may get you there and open to the possibility that will get you there. So being specific enough, I would like to get a PhD. And I would like, but I had no clue that I was going to be writing around intentions. I didn't say I want to get a PhD in public policy and write about data science and who owns your personal data, but rather I want to get a PhD, and please give me, universe, the strength and power and sagacity to get me to that finish line, because it's an enormous amount of work. And lo and behold, this journey kind of twisted and turned, and here we are today talking about this amazing result.
Yeah, that one of the things that I tell people: activate karmic law. As you send out, as I said, it'll return, it'll come back, but it'll come back with wider and more effective than you would ever dream of. But once you activate karmic law and work with karmic law, there's beauty to it. Because when we say karmic law, Professor, Doctor, they all think of just the bad things. It's going to get you. Karma does.
No,
But,
let's think about how karma can be positive.
yes, and that's what I'm saying. You can use that to your advantage by sending out good things and have that karmic law reward you so that you can enjoy your life. Just don't look at the bad things.
We are the creators of our lives and ourselves. We are the manifestors of our potential and our future. It's up to us to pull that superposition down into reality and create the world we want.
All day, 24 hours a day.
You
And
got it.
there's no other way. And that's why I think it forces us to become responsible and to take ownership of, and most people are afraid to do both of that. And that's why you see them in the state that they are. Talk to us about some of your tools that you have available to help them, to guide that couple, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, as we were talking about, taking that 10 minutes and utilizing it. And because I tell people, learn to become a disciple. Whatever you do, you talked about the swimmers, they had to become disciples. You want result? Become a disciple in whatever it is, weight training, whatever you do, even in this particular thing. What's your suggestion, Doc? And we're coming to the end of it, but I want the listeners to begin to see some things out there that they can utilize to bring into their space. And we're going to provide everything for you guys to get access to Doc, get his books, get those books. Why? Because they're much more intricate in guiding you as to how to get from where you are to where you want to be and need to be. So we're going to provide all that. But I just wanted to tap into him while he's here to put us on the right path, if you will, through this conversation so that we can begin to practice some of those things. Talk to us, Doc, as to beyond the 10 minutes and stuff. What other things can we do?
Well, look, so McTaggart is an interesting human being. She was a reporter that was taking scientific innovations and writing about them in newspapers. And again, kind of like me, got hooked in the space. And so she's written a number of best-selling New York Times books. One of them is called The Power of Eight. And every year she has a Power of Eight group that you can sign up for if you want some guidance and people that you don't even know, about 8 of you,
Mm-hmm.
to come together on a weekly basis on a Zoom call and have the discipline of meeting every single week for an hour to send intentions and learn how to send intentions. So that that is one way, one access point for everyone at home to experience this. But if you want to do this on your own, look, it's the idea of writing an intention and then sitting in your a space in your home without a lot of electricity. Okay, so in other words, you're not next to a television or you're not next to a microwave oven, but you're sitting in a place that you go to every time. So what's interesting that Bill Tiller, the Stanford professor, discovered is that places get nurtured over time. A space gets nurtured over time. By the way, not unlike a church, right? So, or a temple or a synagogue or whatever we do, right? We go to a place where historically where we've prayed, and that place then becomes nurtured energetically, spiritually, and becomes a more powerful space from which to send, let's say, a prayer. The same thing is true with intention, according to the scientists that have conducted experiments in this particular area, which would be, let's say in my home, it would be my living room. And I would go there with this group of 8 on a Zoom call, and I would send intentions from that spot for the benefit of one of the other people in our group. So in this particular case, you can do it by yourself in your living room, and you can, send a healing intention to someone you love, who's in need. And to be quite specific about that. In other words, to say, I want this person to be healed completely and to be, exonerated from this disease forever, and to be happy and healthy in all ways, so that you have a certain specificity and completeness to your intention. And then you send that intention. You really try and feel the intention is being sent from your heart and soul, and visualize almost a beam of light
Mm-hmm.
leaving your body and being sent across the quantum field to the person you're intending it for. And then imagine that person being enveloped in the energy that you're sending and the intention that they are wanting or needing to receive to heal. And try and stay there for as long as you can. And by doing this either every day or once a week, but on a consistent basis, whatever you can do on a consistent basis, then your energy level will increase, and your ability to receive intentions and be aware of your environment will increase. And it's a powerful thing. It really is, because we have the ability to manifest ourselves and to positively impact our communities.
I agree. All of you guys and everyone that has been listening to us, again, we're going to provide Dr. Taylor's information and his links and all of that stuff so you can have access to him. I suggest you do, because what he talked about is how you're going to, it's the knowledge that you will need to redirect your life, to recreate what you want, your desired outcome. Get it? Offer it as presents to others. Read it. Let them see what it does to you, and then give it to them as presents so that they can be changed along with you. Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
What a delight. You're a real pro, Ken.
Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun because I know you are so much more deeper than what we have explored. We're going to stay in touch. And again, guys, we're going to provide everything for you guys to get to Doc. All right. Thank you so much, Doc.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully, you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.